At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640 is Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app and YouTube at Mr. Mo Kelly. Live video simulcast going on right now. So go to YouTube and subscribe. You can see all the crew. You can see me. You can see Tuwala. You can see Mark Ronner and even Stefan, and also see the studio with the cool technology we have giving you the simulcast. Let's talk about these tariffs and the Tariff-ageddon, which begins officially. This is going to be a part of my final thought remarks tonight. Tariff-ageddon begins officially at midnight tonight. What do you mean, Mo? What do you mean officially? Well, at midnight, there are extra levies which are placed on China, which will equal effectively 104% tax rate on goods from China. 104%. Starts at midnight tonight. And I'm not even sure whether that's East Coast time or West Coast time. So it might be 9 o'clock before the show's over. The trickle-down effects of that is every single good is either going to be instantly more expensive or it may not be sold at all. Here's what I mean. Nintendo Switch 2, they had already started taking pre-orders for the gaming console. It had a $449 U.S. price tag, $629 in Canada, because there are tariffs already in effect in Canada. And it's going to be going up precipitously everywhere else thanks to the other tariffs. Nintendo has now said, given the latest round of tariffs, which are getting ready to take effect, Nintendo has paused taking orders on the Nintendo Switch 2, and they have not said what the price is going to be, but they did release a statement. Quote, in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving marketing conditions, we have paused taking all pre-orders for the console in the U.S. That is probably going to happen widespread across all companies. How do I know? Tuwala, tell them how I know.
I want you to take it beyond Nintendo for a second, because we have many listeners who may be like, I don't play with Nintendo Switch and I'm not getting my kids a Nintendo Switch. But you may be planning on taking your kids to see films this summer, and we may want our theaters to stay in business, and we want our summer blockbusters to actually be blockbusters. If China goes through with this new plan, which they are announcing now, that they plan on banning U.S. films, banning across the board U.S. films in response to the tariffs, what that does is that literally destroys the rest of this year's film. Forget about the summer film release schedule. We may have studios who say, you know what, we'll hold off on releasing our film this summer because we can't afford to take an L based on this.
Yeah, it's going to get much worse, because think of, the shoe industry, for example. You have a lot of companies who produce their shoes in China, and if not in China, in neighboring Taiwan or Vietnam, and those tariff rates are 46%. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you think that you're going to buy a sneaker in the near future and it's going to cost the same amount as it did today, you're deluding yourselves. And also this is open-ended. We don't know how long this particular tariff war is going to go on. And in every war, there's collateral damage. There's collateral damage for consumers. There's collateral damage for companies, small companies and providers and suppliers. This is going to have untold consequences, regardless of how you may feel about the tariffs. Even if you support Donald Trump 100% in every decision that he makes, he said there's going to be short-term pain. I don't think he can make that statement honestly, because pain is not going to be evenly distributed. And there are certain things that you can't come back from. In other words, let's take Nintendo Switch 2, for example. Let's say the tariffs this battle goes on for at least 3-4 months. You've effectively missed the window of being able to sell that product. And then if you do sell that product, you're not going to be able to sell it at the original price that you originally intended to sell.
What you cannot do is you cannot tell an individual how to respond after you've taken a swing on them.
What do you mean by that,
You've talked about this time and time and time again, Mo. If you take a swing at somebody.
Okay, we were saying like the tariffs is taking a swing.
The tariffs are taking a swing. The tariffs are literally just hauling off and trying to hit somebody.
They started the fight.
You cannot respond, or you cannot control how the individual you are swinging on responds. And it's not just one individual that we are swinging on. It is the globe.
And we know that President Trump has levied this 84% extra levy, which is supposed to take effect in hours.
You mentioned shoes just a second ago, and one of the last figures I saw before we started tonight was that if you are used to paying $100 for, say, a pair of Nikes, it's going to be $300 or $400 now.
No, it won't, because I'm not paying it. No, that would be the price.
No. Look. I go through your closet, go through your house, go through everything you own. Look at every single thing that says made in China, made in Taiwan, and just add an extra $100 on top of whatever it is you paid for that.
Wait, but that's assuming that the punch thrown today, which lands at midnight, is the last punch thrown in the fight. The extra 84% in levied tariffs that the Trump administration has put into effect at midnight is not necessarily the last blow in the fight. If China turns around tomorrow, and I can't even say hypothetically, we'll find out in a few hours, and says, okay, I see your 84% and I raise you 110%. Now what? Which is effect, you punched us, we kick you in the teeth.
Yes.
Because we can't tell China, no, you can't raise your tariffs any higher. No, they have sovereignty as well. And look out if China says, hey, Taiwan, hey, Vietnam, we control most of the textile industry in the United States between shoes, shirts, apparel, technology,
medicine.
Right. Why don't we just go ahead and band together and put all of our tariffs through the roof on just the United States, not anyone else, just the United States. See how that, and you may think, well, I'm with the president and I'm willing to see this through until the end. You don't know what that is. You don't know what that's going to look like. You don't know what that's going to feel like. And you don't know how their markets are going to react to that. You don't know what other countries are going to do to react to that. That's the uncomfortable truth about this. No one knows where this is going. No one knows how long that this is going to go on. And no one knows how much collateral damage is going to be had between now and then. So to say that you know that this is going to happen on the other side, you're lying, because nobody knows. Because many times a lot of the countries are being reactionary in the sense of, oh, U.S., you're going to do this? Well, then we're going to do that. If the United States should pull back their tariffs, then maybe other countries will pull back their tariffs. If the United States should add to their tariffs, then maybe other countries will add to their tariffs. In other words, we don't know what's going to happen. Why? Because it's a fight. And if Tawala swings on me, I may punch, I may kick, I may pick up a chair. You know, I may call my friend who's standing behind him and someone else jumps in to continue the analogy. Yes. It's not one-on-one always, and people don't fight fairly economically or physically. It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app and visually live on our simulcast on YouTube at Mr. Mo Kelly.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app and on YouTube at Mr. Mo Kelly. Fast car. We all remember that song. Or maybe you've heard it more recently because of Luke Combs, who did a remake of it and turned it into another major hit. And if you love the original, you're from a different time in music. There's nothing wrong with that. That was my time in music. And how we consume music was different then. Whether we purchased it or how we purchased it was different then. And I mention it because Tracy Chapman, she doesn't usually give a lot of interviews, but she gave a recent interview and a rare interview to the New York Times. And she revealed, among other things, that she does not use music streaming services. And in addition to that, she encouraged people like you and me to buy physical media, buy a CD or vinyl. She said, artists get paid when you actually buy a CD or the vinyl. That's important to me. Close quote. Let's stop right there. You can't really buy CDs anymore other than on eBay for previously released music collector's items. You can't go to Walmart and just find anything. They may have some
but they have all of the popular things that you would go to. Walmart and Target especially. CDs and vinyl.
Tawala, it's not like, you're old enough to know, it's not like walking into a warehouse or a Sam Goody where all music is available. Maybe the Billboard Hot 100, but it's not an extensive music collection. If I'm looking to buy some music, not likely going to be found at Walmart. But the larger point is, she is saying, and I agree with her intellectually, yes, I am on the side of the artist. If you want to make sure that the artist gets paid for their artistry, you want to make sure that you pay them. And the direct way to pay them is to buy physical media, because we all know that streaming is pennies for, 4 million plays. But she's speaking to a reporter, 20th century, print media, 20th century.
Hey.
I'm just being honest. And she's talking about streaming, something that she does not use, 21st century, and is trying to say, hey, I don't use the 21st century stuff, but I want you to support the 20th century stuff to support 21st century artists. That is not being realistic. I understand and I empathize, but it's not realistic. And she even goes on to say, quote, I'm maybe going to date myself now, or someone's going to call me a Luddite, close quote. Yes. But she goes on, I don't stream music. Yes, you don't stream music, but the rest of us do. This show is being simulcast on what? YouTube. Yes, you can stream music on the iHeartRadio app. People, that's how they get their podcast. That's how they get their music. That's how they get the majority of their entertainment. And I'm not even talking about television. I'm just talking about the audio media. It's not going back. Yes, we have vinyl, which is available for some artists. Yes, there's a resurgence in vinyl, but it's not going to change the direction of the industry.
I don't know, because I was looking at a story that Kelvin Anderson was involved in. It was a story on Kelvin Anderson.
You talking about VIP records?
Legendary VIP in Long Beach. And he was talking about this resurgence and interest in CDs and vinyl and actually owning the music versus owning a digital copy, which has brought VIP, its brand, back from, the brinks, and is actually sparking up this resurgence in quote unquote mom and pop record shops. There are like at least 100 in Los Angeles County alone, new record stores that are popping up that are selling CDs, vinyls, and even some that are going back and finding cassettes and things like that they can sell. It's part of nostalgia, not that cassettes are coming back, but CD and vinyl, it is making such a comeback that now Target, some of their biggest sellers are actual stereos that have record players and CD players in them.
Here's where I would disagree with what you're saying. A resurgence is not an industry, and the resurgence in the way that you'll have mom and pop record stores is not the same as when you had the chain stores of the Sam Goody, the Warehouse, Tower Records. You had them in every major city, in the way that you still have the individual bookstores still exist.
Touche.
But B. Dalton, Barnes and Noble, Crown,
Okay. I get your point.
Them mother fathers are gone.
I get you.
I just had to throw in mother fathers.
Yeah, but listen, it's not like she's telling people to go out and buy whale oil. People do collect vinyl.
They do, but I don't think it's going to bring about the intended impact or effect that she wants. When she's talking about artists get paid when you actually buy a CD or the vinyl, the predominant purchasers of music, and this has never changed, the 15 and 16-year-old girl who's also going to go to the concert, those are the people who are spending their disposable income on the artists, the music, and also going to concerts.
The Utes.
Yeah, Utes, two Utes.
Yes.
I don't know if those kids, and they are literally kids, are going to spend money on the physical media when predominantly they're not listening to physical media. And also they love the streaming services and they're going to go to the concert. It's a disconnect as far as the intended audience, the people who buy the most music, the people who actually go to the concerts, and the people who are, buying physical CDs and vinyl.
Well, it's not totally unrelated to movies because people are starting to realize if you own something digitally, you never really own it. So people are starting to hoard physical media with movies now, too.
I want to use your daughter as an example, Twala. Please excuse me. Does she care about physical media? Because she's the one who's going to buy this music.
She actually does. Every one of her favorite artists, who Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, Tyler the Creator, Olivia Rodrigo, she has actually gone to Target and purchased the vinyl. When we go to Target, she would go in and go straight to the record section. And sometimes she will go through, like I used to do when I was a kid, and she will see a cover of something that just looks, and she'll say, "Oh my God, look at this album cover. This looks, I got to check this out."
But when she plays her music at home, how does she play it?
She has a record player.
That's where she plays her Beyonce, her Taylor Swift and everything?
Yeah. She actually has a record player.
Would you say that she is the exception or the emerging rule?
I think she is the emerging rule because, again, Target, even though their section may not be, 6 and 7 aisles strong, it is at least 3 to 4 aisles strong of vinyl and CDs. And Targets are across the country. Walmarts are across the country. And even Walmart has a very, very robust music section where they are selling physical music. If Tracy Chapman is trying to encourage fans and other artists do the same, this could be that thing that brings back a Warehouse, a Sam Goody, a Tower.
I need to see more because I remember a time, and you do too, where people would buy 1 million albums in a week.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If this happens, then that can happen. If, then that. Yes.
All right. We shall see. We have a Diddy update also in the world of music or, crime, if you want to think of it. When we come back, it's Later with Mo Kelly, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app and YouTube. If you want to see the show,
you're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
iHeartRadio app and YouTube. Got an influx of new subscribers watching the video live stream simulcast on YouTube. Just go to YouTube right now via youtube.com on your desktop or the YouTube app on your phone. Search for Mr. Mo Kelly, MrMokelly, and you will see the live link there. We're going to be simulcasting live all week at the minimum. You'll be able to see me, see Mark, see Stefan, see Twala, see some of the studio, what goes on behind the scenes as we interact with each other. And for example, we're going to be more interactive. We were talking last segment about the resurgence, or to what degree physical audio media has come back into our consciousness. In other words, are people going to be willing to buy CDs and vinyl more, as related to Tracy Chapman's plea for people to buy physical media to support artists? We put up a poll via the YouTube channel, and we asked the question, do you think CDs and physical music media are making a comeback? 57% to Wallace said yes. 43% said no. So the audience watching right now are more siding with you, saying, no, Tawala knows something what he's talking about. People are buying more physical media.
I can dig it. I can. Only because I'm looking at my daughter who is of that age where she is a part of what is trendy, what is happening, what is now. So she wants to own these things as I did when I was her age. So for her, it's not just about listening to the music. It's about the whole experience. It's about actually opening up the vinyl and actually reading all those notes and coming and be like, oh, Daddy, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Oh, I just read that this person produced this track. I'm like, okay, wow.
This will be my only response to that. When you say it's trendy, that means that it's a trend and it will change. Whereas you and I grew up on it and we didn't know any life outside of it, where we had vinyl LPs, we had 33s, 45s, and we had cassette tapes. That wasn't a trend. That was the only way we consumed music. I would only say in response, if it's a trend, all trends come to an end.
It's a trend back towards normalcy.
Oh, okay.
That's the difference with this trend. This is not a trend because this is something that's cool and that's hip. This is a trend towards normalizing that this is the way you consume music. She has actually noted how good her vinyl sounds in comparison to listening to something like on the radio or listening to her stream or whatever.
Facts. No comparison. The dynamic range of vinyl blows away anything these young people have ever heard on any streaming service.
Yes.
And I can get into all the reasons why, but it's just the dynamic range of what you can hear is so much wider. It's not compressed in an MP3 file. And if you don't, put it this way, if you're only used to drinking dirty water, you don't know what clean water tastes like.
And it's interesting because I had to explain to her why, because she was listening to one of her albums. She was like, this sounds totally different than the song that I hear on the radio. I'm like, because you're listening to the album, you're listening to everything that they put into the record versus it being compressed and digitized and played out over the radio.
Speaking of music, or tangentially connected to music, Diddy is back in the news regarding his criminal trial. And get this, Twala, alleged victims of Diddy, besides his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, prosecutors are arguing that they should be allowed to testify at his upcoming trial under pseudonyms because, according to prosecutors, forcing them to reveal their true identities would impose, quote unquote, real costs on the victims and the public.
I agree.
I absolutely disagree because it's a court of law. And if you should be allowed to confront your accusers in a court of law, I need to at least be able to know who they are. Now, maybe they're known to the prosecutors,
yes,
but if I can't effectively cross-examine them on the merits of their testimony and their history and their background, which, by the way, may let everyone know who they are, the general public, I think you're putting Diddy, and I'm not a fan of Diddy, I think you're putting his case at a distinct disadvantage.
I read this as the names have been changed to protect the identity of the victims, but the victims themselves will testify. It's just that we are not going to call them, say, Cassie, you will be Jane, you will be Joe, because of the fact that there is alleged retaliatory comments that are already being made. There are retaliatory reports that are coming out saying that, go and get this person, go and get that person, shut this person up, this person's got to go. These are the things that are being alleged and rumored as far as what has already been happening for those who have come forward, who have revealed who they are.
Here's the answer to that, and here's the solution to that. You don't open the proceedings to the public because they're still going to be a part of the court record, I assume. They're still going to be a part of, the court transcript, because whether we see the person's name or not, Diddy knows who they are. Diddy's defense team knows that it's Cassie Ventura and 5 other people that, who've obviously submitted statements. So his team and his people will already know who these people are. I don't think that changes their testimony. I don't think that further protects them. I understand by not revealing their names to the public what that might do, because you have crazy ass fans out there of Diddy who want to support him, who think that they can protect him, who want to involve themselves with them and go after the people who are testifying against Diddy. I agree with him there. I wonder if this impugns the integrity of the process itself.
So then all the proceedings should be closed court to make sure that you can speak freely We're not involved in it.
Right.
I'm not a victim. You're not a victim. We don't need to know what's happening.
Right. It's not without precedent, especially in New York. We learned from the Trump trial in New York, you don't have a constitutional right per the state of New York to have cameras in the courtroom or media in the courtroom.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do that. Now, it's a public interest because we're talking about Diddy, who's worth, I don't know, maybe $500 million or so. So I understand why we are interested, but I don't know if the public interest is such that there's a necessity for us to be part of it and also involve ourselves. Yes, I would like to protect the people who would be testifying against Diddy, but I don't want something to be appealable later where you somehow sacrifice, you make it easier for Diddy to get off, especially when you only get one bite at this apple.
True that.
Mark Ronald, let me just ask you very quickly about a case like this. You had a cop beat. You were covering a lot of stories like these. Is there a line somewhere as far as the public interest and as far as finding out who is testifying or what have you?
Well, I think times are changing and the line's moving because people are a lot more prone to violence and intimidation now. And we hadn't seen quite as much of that before. I don't know what you attribute it to. I mean, you could guess, you could conjecture. But I think people are much more likely to be harassed and threatened now than they ever were before. And we're seeing that all across our culture. Politicians, you name it.
Yep. We have more on this when we come back. It's Later with Mo Kelly, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app and also on YouTube. Our video live stream simulcast at Mr. Mo Kelly.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly.
KFI, Mo Kelly, YouTube, live stream video simulcast and live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. And before the break, we were talking about Diddy and how prosecutors are arguing that they want accusers, plural, to testify anonymously under pseudonyms in court. And whereas I am not on the side of Diddy at all, I wonder about the unintended consequences of having these individuals testify under pseudonyms and whether that impacts whether they can be effectively cross-examined. The judge has not rendered a decision yet, but I would not want the prosecution to do anything which could be used against them on appeal. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying it seems like there might be some daylight here which could leave the prosecution open for not only scrutiny, but also, be effectively appealed. And you don't get multiple bites at this. And I put the question to Mark about where the line is, if there's a line between the public's need to know and our desire to know, and whether we need to be, as the general public, involved in this case in any way. And I put the question to Mark because he had worked as a crime beat reporter, has been in the courtrooms, has followed cases which have involved high-profile individuals. And you can argue O.J. Simpson got off in part because of the cameras in the courtroom, because of his celebrity. You can argue that Michael Jackson got off because of the public interest and how that unintentionally or maybe intentionally impacted public perception and also influenced the jury. I can see both sides of this, but I wonder whether we have overestimated the need for the public to be involved. And it also does this, before I go back to Mark. The danger confronting would-be accusers is absolutely real. If you know anything about the case, we're talking about P. Diddy being accused of blowing up people's cars, orchestrating beatings, orchestrating, obviously, multiple instances of sexual assault, drugging, violent rape. The implications are real, but at the same time, I'm just talking about within the confines of also effectively prosecuting him. Mark, you were saying.
Well, we seem to have a weird idea of what the public's entitled to see. Not everything that satisfies your lurid curiosity is something you should have the right to look at, and it's up to a prosecutor to determine who's at risk and, if the costs outweigh the benefits. But there are things like the Supreme Court that we have every right in the world to be seeing, but they don't allow cameras.
Yeah. At most, we'll get, and that was only because of COVID, we will now get an audio feed to actually hear an argument before the Supreme Court. That was revolutionary during COVID. Had never been done. But even then, that's as far as the Supreme Court is going to go.
Right. But it puts nobody at risk for the public to see the Supreme Court debating and going through their business. But it could put somebody at risk when you have accusers in a violent crime.
I'm not against it. I just want to be sure that they get it right. So if and when Diddy is found guilty, this won't be used against him as an effective means of appeal. That's all.
Yeah, that's a whole nother layer right there. And I also think about this as a former Child Protective Services worker. There are all sorts of vulnerable people. I mean, imagine, having a child on camera in something like that.
Wait a minute. That's another job I didn't know you had. No.
Oh.
What people don't know is we'll talk to Mark, we'll have these conversations, and another bone will fly out of his closet. And it's like, yeah, he was recruited by the CIA. Yeah, he had like 5 degrees. He was on his way to get doctorate. And it's always something new. It's like you learn something, and he says it so cavalierly.
I didn't realize you didn't know that. It was for a little less than a year between degrees. I worked for CBS.
Did you get that between degrees?
Well, I mean, you finished your degree or your second one or whatever. You wonder what you're going to do, and then you got to pay the bills. And so I don't know what your thinking is, but I always kind of want to do things that I think are worthwhile. And this was literally fighting bad guys. My job was to go out on overnight cases of child abuse and neglect with the cops. And of course, the cops who were armed always made me go through the door first.
Yeah.
But that's the story of that, very briefly.
So actually, it's fair to say then that this particular criminal case speaks to you in a different way than the general public.
I think so, because you always want to be cognizant of who could be harmed by what you're doing. Look at the greater good.
T, I think we're going to find out a lot of stuff that we didn't want to find out about Diddy, his parties, his practices, and he's not the only one. I keep trying to tell people he's not the only one, and that's why a lot of people are remaining silent.
I think the public may be the ones that are in store to learn a lot of what we also already know.
Hello. It's Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Opinion without the preach.
KFI
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere.